What if I told you that the secret to a happier, more resilient life isn't positive thinking? What if the key to overcoming your deepest fears and anxieties was to actively, intentionally, and vividly imagine them coming true? It sounds like a recipe for misery, a direct violation of every self-help book that tells you to be positive and visualize success. But for over 2,000 years, this counterintuitive practice has been one of the most powerful tools in the Stoic arsenal. It's called Premeditatio Malorum, the premeditation of evils. And in this video, you're going to learn how this ancient technique can systematically dismantle your anxieties, build an unshakable core of resilience, and paradoxically lead to a more joyful and appreciative life. Stay with me. Our modern world is addicted to optimism. We're told to hustle, to manifest our dreams, to never doubt ourselves. We're taught that negative thoughts are toxic, that to even consider failure is to invite it into our lives. This relentless pressure to be positive creates a fragile, brittle mindset. We build our hopes on the best-case scenario, and when reality inevitably falls short, when the flight is delayed, the presentation doesn't go perfectly, the relationship hits a rough patch, our entire emotional world comes crashing down. Seneca, one of the great Stoic philosophers, saw this 2,000 years ago. He wrote, "He who has never looked on sorrow can call himself a happy man, but he is a fencer who has never been wounded. He has never had a chance to test his own mettle." Modern optimism tries to wrap us in bubble wrap. It tells us to avoid the storm. Stoicism, on the other hand, hands us a raincoat and a compass. It teaches us how to walk through the storm. The goal isn't to avoid hardship, but to become the person who can handle whatever life throws at them. This is the core problem with toxic positivity. It leaves us unprepared for the reality of human existence. It creates a gap between our expectations and the world as it is. And in that gap, anxiety, fear, and disappointment fester. Premeditatio Malorum is the cure. It's not about being pessimistic, it's about being realistic. It's an act of strategic preparation, an emotional fire drill for the mind. It closes the gap between expectation and reality, and in doing so, it sets you free. So how does this work? Premeditatio Malorum isn't just about dwelling on the negative. It's a precise psychological exercise with 3 specific goals. Understanding these goals is the key to unlocking its power. Most of our anxiety comes from the unknown. We're not afraid of a specific, concrete event. We're afraid of a vague, undefined catastrophe. Our minds spin out of control, imagining 1,000 different terrible outcomes without ever looking at any of them directly. Premeditatio Malorum forces you to drag these fears out of the shadows and into the light. Instead of a vague, "What if I mess up the interview?" you ask yourself, "Okay, what does messing up actually look like? Let's walk through it." You might imagine fumbling a question, spilling water on yourself, or getting a flat tire on the way there. You make the fear specific, and when you do, something incredible happens. You realize you can handle it. Seneca famously said, "There is nothing so wretched or foolish as to anticipate misfortunes." What is the point of anticipating your sorrow? You will suffer soon enough when it arrives. He wasn't saying not to prepare, he was saying not to suffer in advance. By rehearsing the event without the emotional panic, you're not pre-suffering, you're pre-preparing. You're vaccinating yourself against the shock. You're turning the terrifying monster in the closet into a manageable problem you can actually solve. Resilience isn't something you're born with, it's something you build. And just like a muscle, it needs resistance to grow. You can't become physically strong by avoiding heavy weights. You can't become emotionally resilient by avoiding discomfort. Premeditatio Malorum is a form of voluntary imagined discomfort. When you visualize losing your job, you're not just thinking about it. You're sitting with the imagined feeling of uncertainty. When you contemplate a difficult conversation, you're practicing how you'll manage your emotions in a safe, controlled environment. Epictetus, a former slave who became one of the most respected Stoic teachers, put it this way: "Whatever you would make habitual, practice it. And if you would not make a thing habitual, do not practice it, but accustom yourself to something else." If you habitually avoid any thought of discomfort, you will be fragile. If you habitually and intentionally expose yourself to imagined discomfort, you will become resilient. You are, in effect, training your mind to be less reactive. You're teaching your nervous system that it doesn't need to hit the panic button every time something goes wrong. You're building your inner citadel, a fortress of the mind that can withstand the inevitable storms of life. This is perhaps the most beautiful and paradoxical outcome of Premeditatio Malorum. By imagining losing the things you hold dear, you begin to appreciate them more deeply than ever before. We suffer from what psychologists call hedonic adaptation. We get used to the good things in our lives: the loving partner, the stable job, our health, the simple pleasure of a hot cup of coffee. They all become part of the background noise. We take them for granted. Premeditatio Malorum shatters this complacency. When you take a moment to genuinely contemplate what your life would be like without your health, without your loved ones, without the simple comforts you enjoy, you see them again for the gifts they truly are. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor, constantly reminded himself of this. He wrote in his private journal, "Meditations. Do not indulge in dreams of having what you have not, but reckon up the chief of the blessings you do possess, and then thankfully remember how you would crave for them, if they were not yours." This isn't about creating a fear of loss. It's about creating a love of what you have, right now. It's the ultimate antidote to the endless, unsatisfying chase for more. It's the key to finding joy not in what you hope to get, but in what you already possess. Possess in this very moment. This all sounds good in theory, but how do you actually do it without just making yourself miserable? It's a structured practice, not just aimless worrying. Here is a simple 4-step guide to practicing Premeditatio Malorum. Effectively, start by choosing one specific area of anxiety. Don't just think about my career. Get specific. What is the actual fear? Is it getting fired? Is it being passed over for a promotion? Is it a major project failing? Pick one. Let's use the example of a big public speaking engagement you're nervous about. Practical tip: don't start with your absolute biggest, most traumatic fear. Start with something smaller, a 3 or 4 out of 10 on the anxiety scale. Think of it like lifting weights. You don't start with the heaviest weight in the gym. You start with something manageable and build from there. Now you're going to do what your anxious mind does anyway, but you're going to do it on purpose, with control. Visualize the negative outcome in as much detail as possible. Don't just think, "I'll be embarrassed." What does that feel like? Feel the heat in your face. Hear the silence of the crowd. See the unimpressed look on your boss's face in the front row. But here's the crucial difference. You are the director of this movie, not the victim. You are observing the scene, not being swept away by it. You can even take it a step further. What happens next? You finish your speech awkwardly. A few people clap politely. You walk off stage feeling dejected. By walking through the entire sequence, you demystify it. You take the formless, terrifying monster of "what if I fail" and turn it into a concrete, survivable event. I gave a bad speech. It was embarrassing, but I got through it. This is where the practice turns from simple visualization into strategic preparation. Now that you've faced the worst-case scenario, you plan how you would respond. You do this in 2 parts. First, the internal response. This is about your character. How will you choose to act in that moment? You can't control the audience's reaction, but you can control your own. You can decide to respond with dignity, with self-compassion, with a sense of humor. You can remind yourself that your worth is not defined by a single performance. This is practicing the dichotomy of control in real time. Second, the external response. What practical steps could you take to mitigate the damage or recover? You could have backup notes. You could have a funny line ready in case you lose your place. You could plan to talk to your boss afterward to explain what happened. You could ask a trusted colleague for feedback on what went wrong so you can improve for next time. Now, the event is no longer a catastrophe. It's a problem with a set of solutions. You've created a plan. You've built a fire escape. The fear of the fire diminishes because you know exactly how you'd get out. This is the final and most important step. After contemplating what could go wrong, you pivot and return your focus to the present reality, which is almost always better than the scenario you just imagined. Nothing has actually gone wrong. You haven't been fired. You haven't given the bad speech. Your loved ones are still here. Your health is intact. Feel the profound sense of relief and gratitude that comes from this contrast. The speech hasn't happened yet. You still have time to prepare. You still have your health. You still have this present moment. As Seneca wrote, a man who has been through bitter experiences and traveled far enjoys even his weariness. By mentally traveling to a place of misfortune, you come to enjoy the simple, profound peace of the present. You have faced the darkness, and in doing so, you see the light more clearly. This four-step process, practiced for just 5 to 10 minutes in the morning, can fundamentally change your relationship with fear. It turns anxiety from a paralyzing force into a productive one. It transforms you from a passive worrier into a strategic preparer. Like any powerful tool, Premeditatio Malorum can be misused. It's a sharp knife. You can use it to prepare a beautiful meal, or you can cut yourself. Here are the 3 most common mistakes people make and how to avoid them. There is a huge difference between anxious rumination and Stoic premeditation. Rumination is passive, repetitive, and emotional. You're a victim of your thoughts, trapped in a loop of, oh no, what if, what if, what if? Stoic premeditation is active, structured, and rational. You are the one in control. You are intentionally and calmly walking through a scenario with a specific purpose: to prepare. If you find yourself getting lost in the emotion, take a step back. Remind yourself, I am directing this movie. I am not just watching it. The goal is preparation, not panic. Your premeditation should be based on plausible negative outcomes, not outlandish fantasies. If you're nervous about a flight, a plausible negative outcome is a delay, a lost bag, or turbulence. An implausible, unhelpful catastrophe is the plane turning into a giant talking banana. Furthermore, the exercise is incomplete if you only visualize the problem. The most important part is step 3, planning your response. If you only focus on what could go wrong without ever thinking about how you would handle it, you're not practicing premeditatio malorum. You're just scaring yourself. Always close the loop by focusing on your agency and your ability to respond. This is the most critical mistake. The entire practice is designed to make you appreciate the present moment more. If you finish the exercise and feel worse than when you started, you've missed the final, most important step: the pivot to gratitude. You must consciously and intentionally bring your mind back to the present. Look around you. Name 5 things you can see. Name 3 things you're grateful for right now. The exercise is a journey into a possible negative future, but it is a round trip. You must always come back. The purpose of visiting the darkness is to appreciate the light. In a world that sells us the fragile hope of endless positivity, the Stoics offer a more robust and enduring path to tranquility. Premeditatio Malorum is not an invitation to despair. It is the ultimate act of empowerment. It is the recognition that you are capable of handling more than you think. It is the understanding that by facing your imaginary demons, you rob your real-world challenges of their power to terrorize you. And it is the discovery that the most profound joy is often found in the simple, quiet gratitude for a reality that has not yet become a worst-case scenario. So I ask you, what is one fear you can face today? Not to suffer it, but to prepare for it, to rehearse it, and to return from that mental journey with a deeper appreciation for the life you have, right here, right now. The power of premeditatio malorum isn't just theoretical. The greatest Stoic minds practiced it daily, and their lives are a testament to its effectiveness. Let's look at how 3 of the most influential Stoics used this technique to navigate extraordinary challenges. Seneca was one of the wealthiest men in Rome. He was an advisor to the Emperor Nero, a famous playwright, and a man who had everything the ancient world could offer. And yet, every single day, he practiced imagining losing it all. In his letters, Seneca wrote extensively about this practice. He would set aside certain days to live as if he were poor, eating simple food, wearing rough clothes, sleeping on a hard bed. He wasn't doing this as a form of self-punishment. He was doing it to inoculate himself against the fear of poverty. He wrote, "Set aside a certain number of days, during which you shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare, with coarse and rough dress, saying to yourself the while, 'Is this the condition that I feared?' And when the day came that Seneca was actually exiled by Emperor Claudius, he was prepared. He had already lived through it 1,000 times in his mind. The shock was lessened. The fear was diminished. He spent his years in exile on the island of Corsica, not in despair, but in productive philosophical writing. His preparation paid off. Marcus Aurelius was the most powerful man in the world. He ruled the Roman Empire at its height. And yet his private journal, Meditations, reveals a man who constantly reminded himself of the hardships he would face. Every morning, Marcus would write to himself about the difficult people he would encounter, the frustrations he would face, the potential for things to go wrong. This wasn't pessimism, it was strategic preparation. He continued, all of them due to the offender's ignorance of what is good or evil. But for my part, I have long perceived the nature of good and its nobility, the nature of evil and its meanness, and also the nature of the culprit himself, who is my brother. Therefore none of them can injure me. By rehearsing the difficulties of the day before they arrived, Marcus was never caught off guard. He had already decided how he would respond. He had already reminded himself of his own principles. The chaos of the day could not penetrate the fortress he had built in his mind each morning. Epictetus was born a slave. He had no control over his external circumstances. He was owned, beaten, and crippled. And yet, he became one of the most influential philosophers in history, teaching senators and even influencing emperors. His entire philosophy was built on the foundation of Premeditatio Malorum. He taught his students to constantly ask themselves, what is the worst that can happen? And can I handle it? He famously said, when you are going to take in hand any act, remind yourself what kind of an act it is. If you are going to bathe, place before yourself what happens in the bath, some splashing the water, some pushing against one another, some abusing one another, and some stealing. This might seem like a trivial example, but the principle scales to every area of life. Before any endeavor, Epictetus taught you should mentally rehearse the obstacles you might face. By doing so, you will not be disturbed when they inevitably arise. He concluded, thus you will more safely go about this action. If you say to yourself, I now intend to bathe, and to keep my will in a state conformable to nature, and in the same way with regard to every other act. These three men, a wealthy senator, a powerful emperor, and a former slave, all used the same technique. Their circumstances were vastly different, but their mental discipline was the same. Premeditatio Malorum was the common thread that allowed each of them to navigate the storms of their lives with grace and resilience. The Stoics lived 2,000 years ago, but the human mind hasn't changed. We still face fear, anxiety, and uncertainty. The good news is that Premeditatio Malorum is just as effective today as it was in ancient Rome. Here are some specific ways you can apply it to modern life. Before any high-stakes event, take 10 minutes to practice Premeditatio Malorum. Visualize the interview going poorly. Imagine the tough questions, the awkward silences, the feeling of not knowing the answer. Then plan your response. How will you handle a question you can't answer? How will you recover from a stumble? By the time you walk into the room, you will have already faced the worst in your mind, and the real event will feel manageable by comparison. Money is one of the biggest sources of anxiety in modern life. Use Premeditatio Malorum to confront your financial fears directly. What would happen if you lost your job tomorrow? Visualize it. Then plan. What expenses could you cut? Who could you call for help? What skills could you use to find new work? By creating a mental contingency plan, you transform vague financial dread into a concrete, actionable strategy. Relationships are fragile. Instead of taking your partner for granted, practice contemplating their absence. What would your life be like without them? This isn't about creating fear, it's about creating appreciation. When you return from that mental exercise, you will see your partner with fresh eyes. You will be more present, more loving, and more grateful for the time you have together. Health anxiety can be paralyzing. Instead of letting vague fears consume you, use Premeditatio Malorum to face them. What if the test results are bad? What would you do? Who would you tell? What treatment options would you explore? By walking through the scenario, you take back control from the fear. You remind yourself that even in the worst case, you have agency. You can act. You can cope. In each of these applications, the pattern is the same. Face the fear, plan the response, and return to the present with gratitude and clarity. It's a simple formula, but its power is immense. We began this video with a question. What if the secret to a happier life isn't positive thinking? I hope you now see the answer. The secret is not to avoid negative thoughts, but to engage with them strategically, purposefully, and with wisdom. Premeditatio Malorum is not about being pessimistic. It's about being prepared. It's about building a mind that is not fragile, but resilient. It's about cultivating a heart that is not numb, but deeply, profoundly grateful for the present moment. The Stoics understood something that our modern, positivity-obsessed culture has forgotten. That true peace comes not from hoping that nothing bad will ever happen, but from knowing that you can handle whatever does. So I leave you with this challenge. Tomorrow morning, before you start your day, take 5 minutes. Sit quietly and ask yourself, what is one thing I'm afraid of today? And how would I handle it if it came true? Face that fear, plan your response, and then open your eyes and look at the world around you. See the gifts you have. Feel the gratitude for a reality that is, in this moment, better than the worst you imagined. That is the power of Premeditatio Malorum. That is the Stoic secret to overcoming fear. Thank you for watching. If this video helped you, please subscribe and share it with someone who might need to hear this message. I'll see you in the next one.